Breaking tonight, one of the most influential security gatherings on Earth has just confirmed what Mark Carney has been warning about for months. And for Washington, the timing couldn't be more uncomfortable. Across the Western Alliance, tensions are no longer simmering, they're boiling. The Munich Security Conference, the world's largest annual meeting of defense officials, diplomats, and intelligence leaders, has released its latest strategic report, and buried deep inside it is a conclusion that should make every Canadian stop and pay attention. The rules-based international order isn't adapting. It isn't bending. According to Munich's own assessment, it's coming apart, and the country that once designed it is now accelerating its collapse. For years, analysts expected these reports to follow a familiar pattern: carefully chosen language, diplomatic restraint, gentle reminders about unity and cooperation. That's not what happened this year. Instead, researchers Tobias Bund and Sophie Eisentraut released a document so blunt, so direct, that it reads less like an academic analysis and more like a warning flare fired into the night sky. Munich, February 2026, marked a clear shift in tone and intent. Here's the sentence that changes everything. International rules only survive if democratic states are willing to actively defend them. In other words, there is no autopilot anymore. If no one defends the system dies. And that realization has shaken the very conference that once symbolized transatlantic unity. For the first time, Munich is openly questioning whether that bond still exists in any meaningful form. While Washington dismantles the architecture it once championed, Canada's Prime Minister is doing something no one expected. He's preparing for a post-guarantor world. At Canada Nexus, we want to walk you through what the Munich report actually says, because most mainstream coverage is missing the most important part. For decades, countries like Canada operated under a comfortable assumption: attend the meetings, sign the communiques, invoke international law, and trust that the system would hold. Munich says that era is over. Not fading. Not under pressure. Over. Bund states it plainly: the new leadership of the United States has concluded that maintaining the post-1945 international order no longer serves American interests, and more than that, it has begun actively dismantling it. That's not a fringe opinion. That's the foundational briefing document for the Munich Security Conference, the place where NATO ministers, heads of state, and intelligence chiefs gather every year. The message is unmistakable. America isn't stepping back. It's tearing the structure down. And remember last year's conference, when Vice President J.D. Vance stood on that same stage and launched a blistering attack, not against Russia or China, but against European democracies themselves? That was the moment the illusion shattered. This year's report explains exactly what that speech represented. Eisentraut describes these figures as demolition actors, leaders who don't promise reform or repair, but destruction, fueled by fear of decline, resentment of liberal norms, and a desire not to fix the house, but to burn it down and rebuild on the ruins. Now here's where Canada enters the picture. The Munich report doesn't just diagnose the problem, it prescribes a response, and it sounds eerily familiar. Defending institutions, rules, and norms requires material power, not speeches, not values alone. Real capability, real investment. Because just weeks earlier, Mark Carney said nearly the same thing at Davos. Stop pretending the rules-based order still works as advertised. Acknowledge reality, a world of intensifying great power rivalry, where economic integration itself is used as coercion. Germany's top security researchers in February. Canada's Prime Minister in January. Same diagnosis. Same conclusion. The difference? Carney didn't wait for confirmation. He started building the response early. When he called for middle powers to coordinate and invest together, the message spread fast across European capitals. Diplomats now reference it not as theory, but as a framework, and Munich's data backs it up. Trust in the United States as a reliable partner is collapsing. Two-thirds of German respondents say America has become less dependable. Majorities in Canada, the UK, and France agree. And here's the number that should stop everyone cold. In Canada, more people now see the United States as a threat than as an ally. Let that sink in. Canada's closest neighbor, its largest trading partner, the longest undefended border on Earth, viewed increasingly as a risk. And this polling was conducted before Trump's latest threats toward Greenland. So what happens when the foundation of your security becomes a liability? You adapt. You build new coalitions. You invest in real capability. You stop assuming someone else will carry the weight. That's not idealism. That's survival. Eisentraut warns that when institutions appear to be failing and meaningful reform looks impossible, the demolition actors win by default. Destruction becomes political currency. Chaos becomes a brand. But here's what the pessimists get wrong. Canadians haven't turned inward. 35% believe Canada should do more when others pull back. Another 35% support maintaining current commitments. That's 70% saying, we stay engaged. What was missing wasn't public will. It was leadership willing to act on it. Carney understood something before Munich confirmed it. Soft power alone no longer works. Values mean nothing if they can't be defended. But you don't need to be a superpower. You need the right partners. That's why Canada's pivot toward Europe and other middle powers isn't symbolic, it's strategic, moving from reliance to resilience, from assumption to preparation. Stop depending on a single guarantor. Build networks of capability. Invest in credibility. And Europe is responding because they're staring at the same wreckage. They watched Washington weaponize trade. They watched attacks on democratic institutions. And now they're searching for partners who still believe the system is worth saving. Canada is there not because it's the biggest, but because it moved first. Eisentraut adds one final warning: accommodation has run its course. It didn't buy stability, it only bought time, and that time is gone. So where does this leave us? At a pivot point. The old order isn't coming back. The real question is who shapes what comes next. Munich puts it plainly: countries unable or unwilling to adapt to a more coercive world risk being run over. Not sidelined. Not ignored. Run over. For the first time in a generation, Canada has leadership that acknowledges that reality. What we're witnessing isn't just a shift in foreign policy, it's a realignment of the global middle power architecture. Carney saw it at Davos. Munich confirmed it. And the countries willing to invest, coordinate, and build real coalitions will define the next era. Canada didn't wait for permission. It didn't wait for the report. It moved first. And now, the world is catching up. Because this story isn't ending here. In fact, this is where it actually starts. And this is where the Munich report becomes less of an analysis and more of a warning. What makes the Munich report especially dangerous is not just what it says about the United States, but what it reveals about timing. Strategic systems don't collapse overnight. They erode quietly, then fail suddenly. Munich argues that we are now in that second phase, the moment where assumptions shatter faster than institutions can adapt. For middle powers like Canada, this creates a narrow window. Wait too long, and you're forced to react inside someone else's framework. Move early, and you help shape the framework itself. That distinction matters. History is full of countries that believed neutrality or patience would protect them until it didn't. The report repeatedly emphasizes that credibility now matters more than declarations. Alliances are no longer held together by shared values alone, but by demonstrated capability. Countries that cannot contribute meaningfully militarily, economically, or strategically will find themselves consulted less, trusted less, and eventually sidelined altogether. This is why Carney's emphasis on investment is so critical, not just defense spending, but industrial capacity, energy security, supply chain resilience, and technological independence. These aren't abstract policy goals. They are the currency of influence in a world where leverage replaces goodwill. Munich also makes an uncomfortable observation. Coercion is no longer an exception in global politics, it is becoming the norm. Trade restrictions, energy pressure, financial tools, even information warfare are now standard instruments. In that environment, rules only protect those who can enforce consequences when the rules are violated. For Canada, this reframes foreign policy entirely. It's no longer about choosing sides, it's about choosing durability, building relationships that can absorb pressure, withstand shocks, and function even when guarantees fail. That's what resilience actually means, and why this moment is far more than a temporary diplomatic dispute. This isn't speculation, it's direction. And the countries that move now, the ones willing to invest, coordinate, and build real capability, will be the ones that shape what comes next. If this breakdown helped you understand what's really happening beneath the headlines, subscribe to Canada Nexus. We break down these global shifts every day so you're never caught off guard. Turn on notifications, because the next chapter is already unfolding.